Did you know the icons of Hollywood's golden era often viewed religion with deep skepticism? There were some who hated religion, actually. Today, we'll explore the real beliefs of these cinematic legends, whose candid atheism and agnosticism helped redefine society's views during one of America's most conservative periods. Claude Reigns. Behind the smooth voice of Captain Renault from Casablanca, Claude Reigns maintained a sophisticated skepticism toward religion. Born into severe poverty in London, he noticed that churches often remained warm, while poorhouses froze, forming his lifelong opinion that faith rarely intersected meaningfully with charity. His skepticism was discreet but definite. Colleagues recalled how gracefully Reigns would wave away conversations about heaven, simply smiling and remarking, "Actors already get their afterlife on celluloid." This elegant dismissal spoke volumes. Even his personal letters to his daughter outlined his view. Churches offered neither warmth nor genuine comfort. In Hollywood, his aversion to religious doctrine was subtle yet pervasive. He notably refused studio-sponsored Bible studies, and when tragedy struck, such as the death of his first wife, he insisted on strictly secular ceremonies. Professionally, he favored scripts that examined morality without invoking divine judgment. Films like Here Comes Mr. Jordan and Angel on My Shoulder reflected his belief that life's struggles were resolved by human resilience rather than prayers or providence. Off-screen, Reigns quietly sponsored scholarships, emphasizing that opportunity, not providence, was the real catalyst for change. Although firm in his disbelief, he was neither hostile nor dismissive towards those who held religious beliefs. He simply felt religion was unnecessary, a costume he had no desire to wear. This subtle yet clear stance defined his quiet rebellion against the religious status quo. Joseph L. Mankiewicz. At the heart of Hollywood's golden age, Joseph L. Mankiewicz penned scripts with an uncompromising humanist outlook. Raised in a Jewish intellectual household, Mankiewicz early on rejected the religious dogmas surrounding him. Influenced by thinkers such as Voltaire and Darwin, he scribbled critical notes about religious doctrines into book margins, famously remarking, "Dogma, great for dialogue, terrible for truth." His films, including classics like All About Eve and A Letter to Three Wives, presented characters grappling with real-life choices rather than awaiting miracles. He consistently highlighted personal responsibility and rational decision-making as the cornerstones of morality. Studio memos reveal his open disdain for obligatory religious activities. He humorously refused to attend studio Christmas prayers, declaring script conferences sufficiently supplicatory. This wit masked serious convictions. Morality came from reason, never from revelation. During Hollywood's darkest days, the McCarthy era, Mankiewicz passionately defended blacklisted writers, arguing eloquently for freedom of thought and criticizing government persecution as a sinister echo of religious inquisitions. To him, artistic freedom was paramount, and any forced religious conformity was inherently destructive. Late in life, he joked, "If there's a hereafter, I'll file a rewrite," subtly reinforcing his belief that immortality lies in enduring stories, not in an afterlife. For Mankiewicz, rational thought and human creativity were infinitely more meaningful than religious dogma, a conviction clearly reflected in his compelling body of work. John Huston. John Huston's skepticism toward religion was rooted deeply in personal experience and unfiltered observation of life's randomness. Born into a family of performers, Huston quickly learned that life offered no scripted divine order. At just 15, after surviving a near-fatal bout of pneumonia, he firmly concluded existence was fundamentally chaotic, not divinely ordained. Known for legendary films such as The Maltese Falcon and The African Queen, Huston frequently interwoven subtle critiques of religious ideals into his narratives. His notebooks reveal biting musings, one famously asking, "If men invented gods, why not priceless birds?" His irreverent wit often placed religion alongside fanciful illusions. On movie sets, Houston became notorious for skipping Sunday religious services in favor of real-world adventures, such as hunting or exploration, joking that nature was his true cathedral. These episodes cemented his reputation as a man who found awe in tangible experiences rather than sermons. His disdain for religious censorship became pronounced during his tenure as president of the Directors Guild, where he fought vehemently against the restrictive religious mandates of Hollywood's production code. Calling censors high priests of banality, Houston positioned himself squarely against enforced moralism. Even personally, Houston famously tried, and humorously failed, to baptize his daughter as an agnostic. Upon death, his ashes were scattered in the ocean, symbolizing his belief in exploration over heavenly reward. For Houston, curiosity and life's raw experiences always overshadowed religious doctrine. Marlene Dietrich. In smoky Berlin cabarets, Marlene Dietrich first discovered applause could easily substitute hymns. Born in Germany in 1901, Dietrich quickly rose from modest beginnings to international fame, becoming one of the brightest stars of classic cinema. Known for her glamorous roles and powerful presence in films such as The Blue Angel and Shanghai Express, Dietrich openly expressed skepticism towards organized religion, often treating it with a blend of disdain and sharp wit. When a reporter once asked whether she feared hell, Dietrich famously replied, exhaling cigarette smoke elegantly, "Darling, I carry my own fire." Her diaries reveal a clear distrust toward clergy, particularly those who publicly condemned her risque image, but privately sought her autographs. During World War II, while entertaining troops through USO shows, she pointedly declined chaplain blessings, instead emphasizing to soldiers that true courage originated from camaraderie, rather than divine intervention. Her secular worldview was succinctly captured in another famous quip, "I don't believe in God. I believe in myself." Dietrich's personal philosophy was rooted in relentless self-creation and autonomy. She reinvented gender norms, style, accent, and even her national identity with remarkable ease. Close friends, such as Ernest Hemingway, frequently teased her about salvation. In typical Dietrich style, she responded to such jests with indifference, casually sipping her martinis instead. Yet, despite her public image of glamorous rebellion, Dietrich privately exhibited profound ethical standards, quietly donating to Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi persecution, demonstrating her belief that morality required no halo. In her later years, a well-worn copy of Nietzsche lay near her bedside, annotated carefully beside a passage on self-overcoming. Her marginal note simply reading, "Exactly. Betty Davis." From her piercing gaze to her sharp wit, Bette Davis consistently challenged Hollywood norms, especially regarding religion. Born into a rigid Protestant family in 1908 Massachusetts, Davis quickly observed the contradictions inherent in religious devotion. Childhood prayers before meals didn't resolve unpaid bills, sparking her lifelong skepticism toward institutionalized faith. Davis's early observation blossomed into profound irreverence. Throughout her legendary career, notably in films like All About Eve and now Voyager, she embodied independent and complex women, reinforcing her personal disdain for pious platitudes. Hollywood further amplified Davis's skepticism. Witnessing studio executives invoke religious righteousness while ruthlessly exploiting talent, Davis publicly mocked religion's sanctimonious facade. Famously, during a devotional scene on the set of Now, Voyager, she sarcastically remarked, "If Providence meddled this much, we'd never need retakes." Such candid criticism highlighted her belief that religious faith often served more as a dramatic prop than genuine moral compass. Off-screen, Davis hosted notorious Sunday brunches, openly criticizing televangelists and religious hypocrisy while sipping Bloody Marys. Friends recall these gatherings vividly, her fierce opinions as intoxicating as her cocktails. Yet Davis wasn't aggressively hostile toward believers. Instead, she remained distinctly unimpressed. When questioned about her religious views in an interview, she quipped, "I don't mind churches. Good acoustics for a monologue." Private letters to friend Olivia de Havilland reveal Davis's deeper doubts about traditional religious notions of the afterlife. Humorously musing, "What would I do there? Rehearse?" Her moral compass consistently pointed toward hard work and brutal honesty. Agents invoking divine blessings to justify her talent faced immediate dismissal. Replaced with professionals who understood craft, not prayer, defined success. In her final battle against cancer, Davis refused religious consolation, famously scribbling, "No prayers, just morphine." Even at life's end, she remained unapologetically authentic, fiercely committed to reality over comforting illusions. Davis's life was thus a masterclass in realism, stripped entirely of sentimental religious varnish, embodying integrity that defined her remarkable Hollywood legacy. Richard Burton. Richard Burton, one of the most charismatic actors of his generation, carried skepticism towards religion deeply embedded within his Welsh roots. Born in 1925 into a mining village steeped in chapel culture, Burton's early experiences forged a conflicted view of faith. Witnessing miners pray earnestly, yet endure relentless suffering, instilled lasting doubts. At Oxford, Burton's skepticism deepened as he voraciously consumed atheist philosophers, crafting his iconic critique that religion was merely organized hypocrisy, like acting unions, but with worse costumes. Burton's diaries, published posthumously, unveil internal conflicts concerning his abandonment of religious faith, often overshadowed by guilt for pretending otherwise. He famously debated Catholic colleagues during filming of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?, invoking Epicurean arguments against divine justice, confidently dismantling religious reasoning through rigorous intellectual critique. His tempestuous marriage to Elizabeth Taylor, herself somewhat spiritual, humorously highlighted Burton's secular worldview. Taylor joked their marriage was sanctified by vodka, not religious vows. For Burton, alcohol temporarily numbed existential anxieties, which he poetically described as the dreadful hush of empty heavens. Nevertheless, he revered religious rituals purely as poetry, often reciting psalms for rhythm rather than meaning. Burton's skepticism was philosophical, not nihilistic. His literary appreciation drew him to poetic traditions that resonated more deeply than scripture. Late in life, when asked if he feared facing God, he laughed wryly, asserting he'd convincingly played enough kings to bluff past anyone, divine or mortal. At Burton's request, his gravestone bore no cross, only a poignant line from Dylan Thomas, celebrating human music over celestial hymns. The inscription perfectly symbolized his life's philosophy. Beauty, meaning, and redemption existed solely within human creation. His gravestone remains testament, not just to Burton's skepticism, but to his profound reverence for humanity itself, highlighting a life that rejected divine judgment in favor of earthly passion, art, and raw human honesty. Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy's authoritative screen presence masked a turbulent and deeply conflicted relationship with Catholicism. Born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in 1900, Tracy grew up in a devout Irish Catholic household and briefly considered priesthood. However, Tracy soon clashed with the strict discipline of the Jesuits, choosing instead to rebel quietly against the constraints he found stifling. His subsequent career in Hollywood, notably through films such as Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and Inherit the Wind, reflected this lifelong inner conflict between his upbringing and personal skepticism. Although Tracy publicly maintained respectability, privately he distanced himself from religious practices. Studio insiders knew Tracy as a man who skipped Mass in favor of golf games, humorously sketching caricatures of stern bishops into script margins. He famously remarked to director Stanley Kramer, "I believe in decency, not decree," a concise summary of his ethical philosophy. Tracy's private life further complicated his faith. His long-standing relationship with Katharine Hepburn existed outside Catholic doctrine, yet Tracy refused divorce from his wife due to lingering Catholic convictions. This personal paradox underscored his nuanced, often ambivalent stance toward religious orthodoxy. Near the end of his life, suffering from severe illness, Tracy explicitly asked Hepburn to keep priests away, emphasizing his determination to face death without religious comfort. Hepburn honored his request, respecting Tracy's final assertion of personal autonomy over institutional faith. Despite his skepticism, Tracy's personal items included a rosary tucked discreetly in a drawer, symbolizing his complicated relationship with faith. His entire life epitomized quiet apostasy, never fully severed from his religious roots, yet never wholly embracing them. Tracy thus became an icon, not merely of cinematic gravitas, but of a profound spiritual ambivalence, characteristic of those who wrestle deeply with inherited religious identities. His story remains compelling precisely because it refuses easy categorization, embodying the complex reality of doubt beneath the polished surface of Hollywood's golden image. Tula Bankhead. Tula Bankhead embodied irreverence not only on stage and screen, but also in her unapologetic rejection of religion. Born into a politically prominent Episcopalian family in Alabama in 1902, Bankhead quickly eschewed the religious traditions of her upbringing for the excitement and liberal freedom of New York's theater district. By age 18, Bankhead had already dismissed religion as nonsense, humorously equating its restrictive nature to wearing uncomfortable corsets. Her defiance was not merely verbal, but performed publicly. Bankhead's legendary parties featured mock sermons ridiculing Southern revivalist preachers, often complete with feather boas and tinfoil halos, a deliberate, provocative satire of religion's performative piety. Bankhead delighted in openly confronting religious hypocrisy, cleverly utilizing humor as her primary weapon. Yet, beneath her flamboyant critique lay a genuinely ethical spirit. Bankhead anonymously funded numerous orphanages, demonstrating clearly her belief that genuine compassion and morality needed no religious validation. When directly accused of godlessness, she famously retorted, "My conscience and I get along just fine. Plenty of room in this bed." Her career, featuring roles in plays such as The Little Foxes and films like Hitchcock's Lifeboat, reflected this consistent, fearless commitment to authenticity. She deliberately chose characters embodying independence and moral complexity, actively challenging Hollywood's traditional portrayals of religious virtue. Bankhead's personal philosophy celebrated individual autonomy and secular morality. Rather than reject morality itself, she merely rejected religion's monopoly on defining moral standards. Her outspoken skepticism toward religion was fundamentally tied to her broader rebellion against societal constraints, making her a pioneering figure of secular feminism within Hollywood. Tula Bankhead's legacy continues precisely because of her relentless authenticity. Her refusal to accept religion unquestioningly, combined with her unabashedly theatrical rejection of societal norms, marked her permanently as an iconic dissenter, defiant, witty, and utterly unforgettable. David Niven. David Niven's elegant on-screen charm concealed a thoughtful and quietly skeptical perspective on religion. Born in London in 1910, orphaned young, Niven confronted tragedy early, prompting lifelong doubts about religious doctrines promising divine protection. When a boarding school chaplain rationalized his personal tragedies as God's grand design, young Niven bluntly responded, "Then, God designs badly." This gentle skepticism permeated Niven's distinguished acting career, most notably in films like Around the World in 80 Days and Separate Tables. During military service in World War II, he frequently noted that courage and bravery came more reliably from discipline training than from chaplain's blessings. Niven believed fundamentally in human resilience rather than divine intervention. Professionally, Niven maintained a carefully polite distance from religious practice. He respectfully avoided profanity, invoking God, humorously substituting expressions like "old boy," candidly explaining that invoking a deity he doubted felt both rude and illogical. Although avoiding outright hostility toward religion, Niven maintained firm boundaries. When producers proposed a publicity stunt baptism, Niven calmly declined, remarking succinctly, "I'm an actor, not a mascot." Later, battling ALS, Niven graciously accepted friends' prayers not from belief, but appreciation for their kindness. His final years poignantly showcased his dignity and polite agnosticism, beautifully summarized in his gentle acknowledgment, "Your prayers comfort you. Your company comforts me." Niven's secularism was quintessentially British, subtle, respectful, and gracefully understated. His refusal to participate in organized religion never diminished his empathy or integrity, clearly exemplifying how a secular worldview could coexist harmoniously with kindness and decency. David Niven thus remains a compelling figure, precisely because of this nuanced agnosticism, demonstrating eloquently that skepticism and gentility are not mutually exclusive. A timeless reflection of quiet strength beyond Hollywood's facade. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift's piercing eyes on screen mirrored a life profoundly shaped by private struggles and spiritual doubt. Born in Nebraska in 1920 into a wealthy but emotionally distant family, Clift's upbringing provided little religious guidance, leaving him spiritually adrift. Despite brief encounters with Episcopal Sunday School, Clift viewed religion primarily as a place offering donuts rather than divine insight. These early experiences fostered skepticism that would later manifest prominently in his performances. Adolescent anxieties about sexuality, identity, and mortality intensified Clift's personal turmoil, yet religious teachings provided him little solace. Instead, he found institutionalized religion's comforting narratives hollow and unresponsive to life's genuine complexities. His skepticism deepened after a devastating car accident in 1956, leaving his handsome face permanently scarred and his soul further wounded. Diary entries from this time poignantly capture his anguish. "If a loving God scripts this pain, the show is badly cast." Clift's films, such as I Confess, where he portrayed a conflicted priest, and A Place in the Sun, echoed his personal existential battles. On screen, critics celebrated his deeply emotional performances, but friends recognized that his powerful portrayals drew directly from personal anguish and profound disbelief in religious safety nets. For Clift, acting was authenticity amidst imaginary circumstances, whereas religion often felt disingenuous within reality itself. Privately, he studied Kierkegaard and existential philosophy, finding validation in doubt rather than comfort in faith. Hospitalized after his accident, Clift notably rejected chaplain visits, candidly telling nurses, "Pain is company enough." These sentiments starkly conveyed his commitment to reality's raw truth over comforting illusions. Clift's skepticism toward religion was deeply introspective, shaped by authentic experience rather than intellectual disdain. His life, marked by profound emotional honesty and relentless questioning, symbolized Hollywood's deeper undercurrents of existential uncertainty beneath its glamorous facade. Montgomery Clift's enduring legacy remains tied to his uncompromising exploration of human vulnerability, a vulnerability he courageously embraced precisely because he lacked religious consolation. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood's ultimate icon of glamour and vulnerability, quietly harbored complex skepticism toward traditional religious teachings. Born Norma Jean Mortensen in 1926, Monroe's early life was marred by instability, foster homes, and a brief but traumatic association with Christian Science, where religion often denied needed medical intervention. These experiences instilled an early skepticism, associating religion with neglect rather than care. Her adult life continued this pattern of questioning and spiritual restlessness. Marriage to playwright Arthur Miller in 1956 introduced her to secular Judaism, but Monroe's embrace was cultural rather than spiritual. She humorously described herself as a Jewish agnostic, signaling her ambivalence towards any religious institution, promising absolute truths. Private recordings reveal Monroe candidly admitting, "I don't think there's anyone listening upstairs," reinforcing her fundamental doubt about religious certainty. Professionally, Monroe's image was frequently manipulated by Hollywood's religious morality codes. Studio executives staged photo opportunities at Sunday services to bolster her public image. Occasions Monroe privately mocked, humorously joking afterward about praying merely for better lighting. Her consistent rebellion against imposed religious conformity showcased her sharp wit and independent spirit beneath Hollywood's contrived piety. Deeply curious intellectually, Monroe engaged extensively with Freudian psychology and existential literature, profoundly shaping her secular worldview. She notably wore a Star of David, less from religious conviction than a symbolic rebellion against censorship pressures. Publicly questioned about heroes and saints, she confidently declared admiration only for human creations, explicitly rejecting divine mythologies. Tragically, Monroe's premature death in 1962 prompted superficial moral judgments from some religious figures, labeling her death divine punishment. Friends intimately familiar with her struggles knew the truth. Marilyn grappled courageously with personal trauma, not divine retribution. Her lasting legacy resides in her honest, if painful, exploration of human frailty, transcending Hollywood's religious hypocrisy and symbolizing instead the profound dignity inherent in secular self-discovery. Hugh Hefner. Hugh Hefner, the iconic founder of Playboy magazine, wasn't just a media mogul. He was a prominent cultural critic who openly rejected traditional religion's role in society. Born into a conservative Methodist family in 1926 Chicago, Hefner quickly questioned religious institutions' restrictive doctrines, recognizing them as societal control mechanisms rather than pathways to truth. Throughout his life, Hefner openly voiced his skepticism toward religion. He described religious faith explicitly as a tool for control, not a way to understand the universe. Such unambiguous critiques underscored his lifelong commitment to individual freedom, rational inquiry, and personal expression, starkly contrasting traditional religious morality. Hefner's Playboy Mansion became a legendary forum for intellectual exploration, regularly hosting debates and discussions that challenged societal norms, religious doctrines, and censorship laws. These dialogues reflected Hefner's core belief that truth emerged through free thought and rational discussion, rather than religious dogma. His defense of sexual liberation and freedom of expression was fundamentally grounded in his secular philosophy, asserting human creativity and reason as superior guides to life. His magazines and personal philosophy dramatically impacted America's social landscape, directly challenging conservative religious doctrines about morality and sexuality. Hefner consistently advocated secular humanism, emphasizing reason, empathy, and intellectual freedom as central tenets of a meaningful life. Despite vehement opposition from religious groups branding him immoral, Hefner calmly defended secular values, asserting that genuine morality derived from personal responsibility rather than religious compliance. His clear, rational arguments reshaped American attitudes toward sexuality, freedom, and individual rights, leaving an enduring legacy advocating secular ethics as fundamentally humane. Hefner's skepticism toward organized religion was neither subtle nor apologetic. It was proudly proclaimed and intellectually defended. Until his death in 2017, he consistently promoted secular values of reason, critical thinking, and personal autonomy, profoundly influencing America's evolving cultural consciousness far beyond the magazine racks he famously occupied. Chloris Leechman. Chloris Leechman's remarkable 7-decade acting career, rich with accolades including 8 Emmys and an Oscar, mirrored her lifelong commitment to independent thought and skepticism toward organized religion. Born in Iowa in 1926, Leechman quickly rejected religious dogma, favoring personal experience and rational inquiry as her ethical foundation. Her skepticism was quietly persistent, often expressed with her characteristic humor and directness. Throughout her career, Leechman openly questioned the validity and necessity of traditional religious teachings, famously quipping, "I like to think for myself. I don't need a rulebook." Her pragmatic worldview emphasized tangible experiences, direct human connection, and rational understanding over abstract spiritual doctrines. She consistently rejected religion's promises of certainty, preferring life's inherent ambiguity and complexity. In television and film roles, such as in The Last Picture Show and the acclaimed sitcom The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Leechman portrayed women of depth, complexity, and fierce independence, characters often reflecting her own personal ethos. Her roles challenged cultural stereotypes and societal norms, reinforcing her broader critique of religion as restrictive rather than liberating. Off-screen, Leechman famously refused religious rituals, preferring to rely upon science, logic, and personal intuition. Interviews frequently showcased her skeptical humor, gently mocking superstitions and religious doctrines alike. Her straightforwardness resonated with audiences navigating similar doubts and skepticism amid societal pressures toward religious conformity. Her humor wasn't merely dismissive, but profoundly liberating, often highlighting the absurdities inherent in religious dogmas. She encouraged personal authenticity over compliance, consistently demonstrating that morality, compassion, and meaning could thrive independently of institutionalized belief systems. Leechman's legacy endures precisely because of this honest authenticity. Her skepticism was refreshingly clear-eyed, devoid of bitterness or antagonism, celebrating individual freedom, critical thinking, and practical wisdom over religious conformity. Chloris Leechman remains an enduring icon, not only for her extraordinary career achievements, but also as an exemplar of intelligent, compassionate secularism within America's entertainment history. Warren Mitchell. Warren Mitchell, beloved British actor renowned for his iconic role as Alf Garnett in Till Death Us Do Part, consistently demonstrated a sharp, irreverent skepticism towards religion. Born Warren Meisel in London in 1926 to Russian Jewish immigrant parents, Mitchell grew up witnessing firsthand the contradictions inherent within religious teachings. His skepticism quickly evolved into a defining personal and artistic trait, infusing both his public performances and private conversations with biting satirical commentary on religion's absurdities. Throughout his long career, Mitchell's wit famously dismantled religious doctrines with surgical precision. He openly mocked religious sermons, humorously declaring, "I'm not one for sermons. I prefer to get my answers from life itself." This succinct statement illustrated his fundamental belief. Truth and morality emerged naturally through lived experience, rather than prescribed rituals. His comedic style was unapologetically direct, often leveraging sarcasm to illuminate religious hypocrisy. Mitchell frequently used humor to underscore the inconsistencies he perceived in religious dogmas, presenting a relatable critique that resonated powerfully with audiences confronting their own doubts about institutional faith. Yet Mitchell's critique was never purely dismissive. Instead, he engaged deeply with societal norms, encouraging critical thought through satire. His characters, especially Alf Garnett, vividly exposed the pitfalls of dogmatic thinking, reflecting Mitchell's broader societal critique of unquestioned religious adherence. His candid approach provided audiences a refreshing perspective on religion, not through harsh condemnation, but through genuinely entertaining, insightful humor. Offstage, Mitchell's skepticism remained consistent. He favored intellectual curiosity, rational observation, and evidence-based reasoning over religious explanations. Mitchell's willingness to publicly challenge religious conventions significantly influenced British cultural conversations about faith, tradition, and individual autonomy. Warren Mitchell's legacy extends beyond acting. It resides in his fearless, humorous advocacy for rational thought and independent inquiry. Through laughter, Mitchell effectively questioned religion's authoritative claims, offering audiences a vibrant, secular alternative to blind faith. An approach as entertaining as it was intellectually liberating, permanently embedding him as one of British entertainment's most influential secular voices.